Good morning.
Good
Good morning.
morning, ladies and gentlemen. Extremely
You ready to go?
excited. Yeah, we are ready to rock and roll. We've got Mr. Dave Durante with us today.
I can't hear Todd.
Am I out? Can you hear me?
All of a
We're
sudden,
good.
Yeah.
All of a sudden we lost.
Yeah. It's working fine.
maybe unplug your.
I don't have anything plugged in here.
No, Todd, unplug your earphones.
I don't think it would be that. Let's
And
see.
see if
I'll go
that
back to
works.
this thing. Anyways, but you can hear Kristin?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yeah.
Okay. Todd, why don't you disappear and come back?
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Well, while we're waiting for Todd to do that, then I will give a little introduction. So we're super pumped to have Dave here. Former Team USA Olympic gymnast for obviously for the United States. We're talking to you a little bit before we got on, talking about all of the travels that you were able to do for Team USA, then part of the CrossFit Gymnastics team, and more recently have started and opened up Power Monkey Fitness. So have been traveling around the world and has a specialty in teaching gymnastics, and we're going to talk all things gymnastics as far as CrossFit coaching goes. So Dave, we're super pumped to have you here today. So thanks for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be chatting with you guys, and hopefully Todd's audio is working and we can.
let's see what we got. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
All right, we're back. We're good to go.
Fantastic.
All right, perfect. So I know you were with us at Affiliate Con just a couple of weeks ago, and unfortunately wasn't able to see your presentations, but heard such great things. And I know at Power Monkey, you guys have a system and approach to teaching and using progressions for gymnastics. So I'd be curious to hear just what is that approach? How should we as coaches and as athletes and CrossFit affiliates be approaching the gymnastics movement, specifically the high skill stuff that everybody's so anxious to get into?
Sure. I think the easiest way to kind of go through it is to discuss our hierarchy of skill development, gymnastics hierarchy of skill development. It's broken down into 4 phases. And the first phase is about shape creation, body shape creation. Can I get my body in the shape that I need for higher skill development? And shape creation is broken down into 2 subcomponents. One is a stronger core. And when we talk about core, we're not just talking about, your beach muscles, what you can see in the mirror, your abs, your hip flexors, awesome, very important, but it's also the neglected areas. It's rotation and lateral work. It's working on your obliques. It's working on your posterior chain. We're trying to get an all-encompassing strong core so that we can apply you to a good shape. If that makes sense. Something we do endlessly in the gymnastics world. And then the secondary pillar there is more mobility, which should be obvious. But if you can't access range to create a good shape, compensations happen, less efficient movement, and then we see more breakdown and potential for injury. So that first phase is so critical in skill development, creation of shapes through a stronger core and through more mobility. 2 things that we recommend people doing on a daily basis.
When you're looking at developing more strength through the core, is it a lot of is it more so static positions? I'm thinking of like hollow holds, L sits, that type of stuff. Is that really the direction you go, or is it the stuff that we typically see in the CrossFit affiliate where it's ab mat sit-ups, it's potentially GHD sit-ups, it's toes to bar most of the time? Those are kipping and dynamic. So I'm assuming that's probably, you want something precursor to that, correct?
There's kind of like two ways to answer that. First, I'll say that phase 2 is static hold controlled movement, which is your tempo work, your pause work, your isometrics, the part that a lot of people find to be boring, where we spend endless amount of time in the gymnastics world, right, where we build the capacity to control our end ranges. So before we jump into phase 3, which is dynamic action, we build controlled and stability in phase 2. So with that being said, in terms of application to core specific exercises, one, it's a variety. It's not just, you have your patterns. If I'm doing core, it's a toes to bar. If I'm doing core, it's a GHD setup, whatever it might be. We have an endless, pool of exercise to pull from when it comes to core work in the gymnastics world. And so it's a variety. I would say what's more important than anything is, the term that probably everybody uses when it comes to seeing slow incremental gains. It's just being consistent with it. You can't do core work one day a week and expect it to actually become a benefit. It needs to be something that's done on a very regular basis. And so what we try to do is, well, one, through our Power Monkey training app, we have a free daily core workout to kind of emphasize this point. Just go on our app, and every day we put up a core workout that kind of does this exact thing. It rotates through different ways to think about core, tackles those different areas. But in the gymnastics world, normally if we program, we would do, hey, we're going to do some posterior chain work, then we'll do some rotational work, then we'll do some, anterior work, and just kind of continue to rotate throughout the week, touching on different areas.
And how long does that typically take? Like what you guys prescribe there?
I think in the gymnastics world, we spend a little bit more time just because imagine at the lead level, I was training 8+ hours a day. So the amount of time that you can dedicate to these, areas of need or, accessory exercises is a little bit longer. For a 1 hour that you have to go in and train, the workouts that we put up on the Power Monkey training app are between 5 to 10 minutes. They're meant to be finishers. They're meant to be something that you can add on to any existing workout, and they're bite-sized and they're very effective. So you don't need a ton of time if you don't have it.
Yeah. Which fits into the model of what we do every day in the affiliate super easily, right? Like the cash outs, the little weakness work. Yeah.
Yeah, they're meant to be accessible.
Accessible. Okay. That was going to be my next question. So is it should we put these into warm-ups, but typically you do them at the end of class? Could they be used as a like in the general warm-up or a precursor to class as well?
I'd say even though they're 5 to 10 minutes, they can get a little bit challenging. And so what we try to do is not overly fatigue prior to a workout. And so if it's a positional component, it's going to assist in terms of helping someone understand how to move better within the workout, great. But if it's going to create fatigue unnecessarily and then impact the ability to, do a Fran or whatever it might be, we want to try to limit. We want to limit that. We want to make sure someone's still fresh and able to attack a workout appropriately.
Got it. All right. So we got to start with core strength. We need to be doing this every single day, or at least very consistently during the week. That sets us up for the strength to start to probably understand the shapes a little bit better. How do we take that concept?
Applying the shapes.
Yeah. How do we take that concept of like applying the shapes and start to introduce that more consistently in an affiliate setting with our diverse group of clients? And it's like, I'm trying to think at my own affiliate, it's like, all right, we do cash outs or finishers, maybe 3 days a week, something like that. So I feel like we could start doing a little bit more of that with the core stuff. I also know that not everybody comes every single day. So not everybody's going to get as much exposure to this stuff as I necessarily want them to, or would be ideal. But I got to imagine that we can still start incorporating some of these shapes and start progressing people on the front end to go over the skills that we're going to be using in our workouts. Am I on the right track there, or how do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about application to the particular workout, right? I'd say it's like part of the warm up. If you don't have the time to dedicate 5 to 10 minutes to a core session, but you're looking to create shapes as an identity within a workout, it really depends on what the workout calls for. So if you're doing handstands, there are things you can be doing to benefit shapes for the handstand as part of your warm up and not overdo it in a bunch of different areas. And just as an example there, just so you and your listeners kind of have an idea of, particularly when it comes to handstands and we think about shapes, I think a lot of people think about, hollow and arch. Great. Right. They're incredibly important positions. They are the two fundamental positions for gymnastics as it applies to when we get into more dynamic action, swinging, kipping, those kind of things. However, if you're thinking about applying a hollow to a handstand, in most cases, people over-exaggerate it.
Yep.
And their positions either end up creating an angle at their hips where they end up piking, which is not great. We're looking for straight lines in our handstands, or they over-curve and they create too much of a curved shape. And that's great for thinking about applying it to like a swinging action, a kip. Handstands for straight lines. Handstands are requiring straight lines. So the hollow for a handstand is a much more subtle position. And so anytime I'm applying a drill that's going to be applied to a workout that has a handstand in it, I'm trying to get people to understand positional awareness. I want fixed points. meaning their handstand drill should either have their feet fixed, they're hanging from a bar, their hands are pressing into something, or both, where they're hanging from a lower bar and their feet are fixed, and all they're doing is trying to manipulate their hip position into a more subtle, rounded lower back, where the rest of the body is creating a straight line. And so application positionally for a handstand, we think about hollow, is much more subtle than if you're doing it for a kip or a swing or a bar or ring particular movement. So I think that's kind of a little bit of a misconception. We think, all right, we're doing handstands today, let's get into our hollows. It's not a great tool unless you actually are very keen on your eye in terms of what the true application is.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I think you're right. Whereas coaches, we think arch hollow, and it's like that's what the hollow looks like, that's what the arch looks like. And so the fact that there's this almost gray area where it can still be a hollow, but it's going to look different depending on the application, is something to certainly consider. And I even love the idea of using the bar to practice the position of a handstand. I don't think
Absolutely.
I don't think a lot of coaches think of it that way. We think, oh, we've got to practice the handstand. We've got to get against the wall upside down.
Yeah, and just to reemphasize that point, I love handstands. I spend a lot of my time upside down. It's like my favorite. I'm like a bat. But when I'm teaching handstands, one of the things I say all the time is I would like people to work on handstands every day. But the one little caveat to that is that you don't have to get inverted to work on your handstand. You can work your handstand upright, hanging from a bar, being at angles, being prone, being supinated. There are so many different handstand exercises you can work on that don't require you for you to be inverted. And I think that's a misconception of saying, oh my God, every time I work on handstands, my wrists hurt, I don't know what's going on, I'm scared about being inverted. There are so many tools you can put in your tool belt to help with your handstand that are more simplified, that allow you to learn how to breathe, that allow you to work on position, that don't require you to be upside down. So I think it's a really important point.
That is, yeah, that's awesome to think about. And once again, it just gets into the concept and the idea of consistency here and figuring out how can we find a way to get more consistency in all of this stuff. Tell me what that would you ever use the hanging from a pull-up bar or feet on the ground? I guess if I'm trying to imagine the concept with a little bit lower pull-up bar, working on that shape, feet flat on the ground, am I holding the bar? Am I pressing up into the bar? And would you use that as a progression step on a day where we're going to do handstands? And would that probably make more sense on a handstand walking day, make more sense on a handstand push-up day? Could it go for either one of those? Like what's your thoughts and recommendations there?
A broader picture here is to understand that I envision the way I break down handstand training is the 3 buckets of training. Most CrossFit athletes in their gym are working on one of those 3 buckets. When you're using the wall as your tool and you're kicking up, doing wall walks, doing handstand push-ups, backward stomach to wall, you're working on the strength pillar, which is very important. You're working on the ability of the shoulder, upper back to become strong enough to hold and keep yourself in the inverted position. It's very, very important. However, it doesn't train the other 2 fundamental pillars. One of those is positional components, figuring out alignment. Do I know how to be stacked? Do I know how to make adjustments that's necessary to actually create efficiency within my handstand? And most CrossFit athletes completely neglect positional awareness when it comes to handstands. It's more survival than it is understanding. It's like,
can I do a handstand push-up and can I walk? I can't.
Yeah, you don't want to see me do a
place.
handstand walk. I look like a scorpion.
And especially when people are learning for the first time, if you're telling them, okay, where's your eye line? What are your fingers doing? Where are you looking? There are so many little components. Are you breathing? Most people are not even breathing in their handstands, which then means how long can I hold a handstand? The duration of my handstand is dictated according to how long I can hold my breath. Not great, right? So there are a lot of things that go into it. So positional exercises need to be a pillar by themselves. And there are endless amount of positional exercises. And Todd, the one that you just mentioned, is one of those. So am I hanging from the bar and just trying to create a straight line? Normally I would do it using visual contact points. So I use like the upright of the rig as a guide to see whether or not I'm in a straight line. And most people, you can do this with your members, just have them hang for 10 seconds and see if they're creating any angles. Have someone in their group stand on the side and say, no, your feet are 5 inches in front of the upright or 5 inches behind the upright. Your goal is to try to find a straight line from your shoulder, your hands, shoulder, hip, all the way down through your feet. And just work on small manipulations to be able to find where straight line is. And that's just one good tool. Can I squeeze my butt? Can I roll my hips under? Can I work on those small manipulations and use the upright as a visual target? So that is one of the ways that we can say, hey, can we use a hanging drill that could be applied eventually to being inverted when, spatial awareness is a little bit more of a bigger component. So give them a simplified version and then apply it to something more complicated.
It's interesting because I think in general, as coaches, we spend so much time with positioning with the barbell,
I
with
know.
older athletes. We get so picky about like where the knee is, where the hips are relative to the shoulder, which is all great. But
Why do you think this is, though?
Yeah, I mean, why do I think it is?
Yeah.
I think, and I think this question by Vicente kind of leads to it. I think it's an easier thing for me as a coach to navigate because I can scale the load and hold positions with a barbell. Hey, we can go with an empty barbell, a training bar, a PVC pipe. I can hold you at your knee. I can, hold you at mid shin. We can do some of that stuff. Whereas in gymnastics, if you're upside down, I don't have the ability to be like, all right, kick up. I won't say I don't have the ability to, but it becomes way more challenging to get everybody into a similar position and hold them for the same amount of time. And so I think we need to get more creative and have, I just think more creative and we've got to be more directive as coaches. Yeah. To do some of this kind of stuff. Right. A lot of times it's like, I'm not thinking about the handstand, but the kip swings, because they're dynamic. If we're teaching pull-ups, I'm like, hey guys, jump up and give me 5. Well, now I have less opportunity for them to hold positions for me to look and see. And so I've got to come up with ways where I can look at static positions and do some different things. So all of that to say, good.
I was just going to say, I also think in general, we don't see a lot of coaches treating the gymnastics components just the same as we do the barbell. Like we have templates, we have a system, it's much more well known how to do that. And then it's time for the handstand or it's time for the kip swing. And it's like, okay, just get up and do 5 kip swings. And we just let them kind of go. And the focus just is on that barbell. And I don't know if it's a lack of tools or just a lack of, we've been talking a lot lately about treating the gymnastics element with the same structure as you would treat a barbell, where we're going to find static holds that we can look at. We're going to take people through the progression. Yeah, it's interesting though.
I couldn't agree more. And let me just again give you a couple examples when I'm teaching courses and we have our camps and stuff. One with regards to handstand is that you cannot tell a member or think about a handstand as being all or nothing, meaning it's either I can do it or I can't do it. That's not sufficient. There are so many ways to be incrementally seeing progression within your handstand if you have the tools to be able to say, you're not ready to get fully inverted, but here are 5 exercises that will benefit the positional side of your handstand if you want to tackle it, and we'll figure out where you are along this journey. Everyone is along this continuum of a first tentative attempt up to mastery of that movement, and our goal is to find a progression that's appropriate for that person's starting point. And if you don't have the tool, you're going to limit that person's ability, and you as a coach are just going to say, keep doing those 5 kip swings because that's all the only thing I have in my tool belt. So it's very important to understand that they are not all or nothing. And secondarily, I will say this just comes back as an emphasized point around our phase 2 of training. I always ask this question, and it's almost universal. I'll ask how many people in the audience, how many coaches, how many owners, how many athletes spend time doing pause and tempo squats and pause and tempo, barbell movements. Almost universal.
They all raise their hand. Yeah.
Across the board. How many athletes are willing or in their daily training are doing pause and tempo push and pull work with their body weight, with their gymnastics? Almost no one. Almost no one. It's an endless component of the gym. You go to any gymnastics gym and you're going to see the athletes working on pause dips, working on support positions, working on pause pull-ups, working on positional awareness statically before we start thinking about using dynamic action. So the way and the mentality that you are all training your barbell positions and the way that you're coaching them needs to be the same thing you do for gymnastics training. It's not, rocket science here. It's just an application and doing the same thing. Slow things down, create positional awareness in the same way that you do with the barbell.
And so if we're thinking about that as a similar way to what we do with the barbell, well, clearly with the barbell, it's easy to meet athletes where they're at based on load. Hey, we got an empty barbell, we got a training bar, we got a PVC pipe. So to do that same thing as it relates to gymnastics, if we stick with a handstand, let's say we want to do a static hold in a handstand and we want to do a negative and then hold the bottom of it, right? I think too many times we either progress from like a pike version of this on the ground, then maybe knees or toes on a box pike, and then up against the wall.
Are you talking about handstand push-up or just a handstand position in general?
Like a handstand push-up, I guess, or a handstand to a handstand push-up, if I'm thinking negatives, right? And so I know for myself and at my gym, we'll do a lot of negative work with handstand push-ups. Once we kick up against the wall, we probably don't do that stuff as much on the box. And so to take some of those athletes that aren't ready to kick up to the wall or can't control the way down, we just need to stick and do the same thing, but have the boxes set up right there and have them work that same position with the box? Or is there a different route that we should go?
So if you're thinking about it more just with regards to the handstand, taking out the push-up equation for it right now, the misstep, and this is, I highlight this when I'm teaching my courses as saying that it's probably the most underutilized, valuable handstand exercise that I can encourage more people do. Most people's handstand when they're training are back to wall handstands. They're kicking up. They're not thinking about placing their feet onto the wall with purpose and intention. They're just launching and knowing that the wall is going to stop them, so they don't have any consideration for how much momentum they're trying to generate. And so, yes, you're getting upside down. Cool. Great. And there's a lot of benefit that come along with that. However, I would highly recommend people turning around and doing wall-facing versions here. And a little caveat to that is that it's not a wall walk. I think a wall walk where the completion of the movement is thought of as getting as close to the wall as possible, that's scary as hell for a lot of people. Not only scary, but then if someone has the strength to get into the position, a lot of times they don't have strength to get out of it. And they end up just like slugging down the wall and just like bag of bricks just dropping down. And that can be very scary for someone to say, I don't want to do a walk because I have no idea how to get out of it. And it's not benefiting me. I'm scared out of my mind being there. The starting point is an angled wall hold where you are fairly far from the wall. The setup would look something like this. You sit on your butt, feet out in front in a pike position with your back basically all the way up against the wall. Okay. Right? Okay. Where your feet are is where I want your hands to go. So basically imagining a 45-degree angle that you're trying to create. Okay. So the person is putting their hands down and just stepping up. And the goal is just to get weight onto their shoulders and weight into their hands. That's it. Don't worry about getting fully inverted. There is so much value positionally trying to find a straight line up against the wall without worrying about getting fully inverted. And so that angled wall hold is a tool that I use endlessly with someone that's not fully comfortable getting inverted, where they can step up and step down, and then incrementally, 1 little inch at a time, they can slowly move their hands closer until eventually they get fully inverted. It's not all or nothing. That angle is a critical step.
I love that because the end goal isn't like you were saying with the wall walk. The goal is like, we've got to get ourselves as close to the wall as possible. Now we're successful with that wall walk. Right. Here, it's not getting as close to the wall as possible. It's getting in that really beautiful, good position. Once you can get into that nice straight position, then you've earned the right to walk your hands a little bit closer to the wall, but you still need to maintain. It's really similar to how we run like squat therapy, right? I'm going to stand my athlete a little further away from the wall. They're showing me that they have the ability to do a nice, beautiful air squat, and then they can get a little bit closer to the wall from there. The goal is not to just do a crappy air squat just because your chest is touching the wall. Yeah, I love that.
So from that same position, I love that because that essentially works the same as PVC pipe, training bar, barbell, loaded barbell, right? Just the closer you get to the wall. I've not found anybody that can at least put their hands on the ground and put their feet up unless they're injured, right?
Well, you will find people like at our camp. We have people in their 80s that come out to camp that, maybe have never done this before. Maybe their strength is not there and they're, they need a little additional assistance. Not to say that it's going to make it universally applicable, But I would say that 90+% of the people that are scared of getting inverted will be able to do this exercise. But we do have other tools. This is just one that I find to be very beneficial, that is a missing link for most people when they're working on their handstands.
Yeah. And then I also find it's a lot easier as a coach and then also as an athlete to see that nuanced position that you were talking about, to find and look for that hollow that's not the hollow that we see when we're hanging and doing kipping pull-ups and toes to bar and stuff like that. Because you, like you said, you want that straight line from hands to feet, regardless of the angle there. I think that's great. Do you ever, like, if that's the handstand hold, do you try to do any of the, like, any handstand push-up mechanics from that same position?
Yeah, absolutely. We could spend 5 hours in just a handstand push-up. So
Yeah,
just kind of
okay.
keep that in mind. Like, cut me short on the handstand push-up whenever
Well,
appropriate here.
all right, I'm gonna take that question back. I want to point out one thing that Brad says. He says, I think the challenge with handstands, and I think this goes for all the gymnastics, and
More
we get a lot of
gymnastics
questions about
movements,
this,
beyond handstand.
is they're not part of the 9 foundational movements. So you need to find the points of performance, and different coaches have different approaches. You know, coming from the CrossFit side of things, the reason the 9 foundational movements are the 9 foundational movements are because within those 9 movements contain the common movement themes that for the most part are universal across all functional movements. And I would argue that those points of performance that we see in the 9 foundational movements show back up in the gymnastics movements. I think maybe sometimes coaches just don't have the ability to connect the dots and link those. Like the finished position for a shoulder press is roughly the same finished position that we're looking for a handstand push-up. And the mechanics when we're pressing is relatively similar to the mechanics we're looking for with the handstand push-up. Would you agree with that? Or would you say that the differences are more than nuanced differences as far as like performance is concerned?
Yeah, I'd say there are some similarities, but there would be some benefit to spending more time. Like if we do a 10 foundational movement in there and add some positional components around your handstand. I mean, Coach Glassman emphasized gymnastics movements quite a bit in his 100 words or less. I mean, if you look at the amount of handstand skills in there, he mentioned flips, he mentions presses, he mentions pirouetting. You know, there are things in there that splits. You know, there are things that are in there that are clearly intended to be a part of this method. And the people just don't have the tools to be able to understand, how do I even work towards them? So we've ended up kind of like just putting them as a bucket, and like, hey, there's 3 handstand exercises that we're going to do. It's a handstand hold, a handstand push-up, and a handstand walk, and that's it. And it becomes really challenging for coaches who are trying to work on so many different areas to be able to implement press to handstand work. How do I even do that? And so what we try to do is simplify it and say there are tools that you can put into an everyday training session that are incredibly valuable, that focus on core, but then also have application to something more complicated. As an example around this, when I'm teaching my handstands, the third pillar of the handstand that I didn't mention earlier, we talked about the strength, being able to hold and keep yourself in the inverted position. Also, we talked about positional components, but then we didn't talk about stability, actually moving away from the wall. And I think this is such a huge part of most people's training, is they end up starting with the wall and they forever use the wall without understanding that the way that we teach as an overarching theme within our method, within Power Monkey's hierarchy of gymnastics movement, is working towards the highest level version of all movements, not working towards standards. We never train people towards a particular standard. Standards change. And if you are only working towards a standard, you will be exposed as an athlete at some point. So we always train people towards the highest level version of that movement and then apply that technique to whatever's needed when it comes up in a competitive or workout setting. All right. So with that in mind, when we think about like that third pillar, stability, moving away from the wall, what's the highest level version of a handstand? I'll ask this to groups. Freestanding handstand. Well, what about a ring freestanding handstand? Most people will be like, that's laughable to me. Like, I will never do anything like that. It doesn't matter to me whether or not you actually achieve that end goal. But we need to set the progressions so that that can potentially be possible. Never backdooring a skill, never exposing yourself because you've not worked towards the highest level version, or a one-arm handstand, or some of these more complex handstand type of exercises, right? So they're out there, and we want to make sure that we at least have an awareness of how to work towards them. But the stability is something that's so important. And I break down stability into two buckets. Everything is kind of spider webbed here in terms of how complex it can be, and give you more tools. If you're working with someone that's saying, I want to work away from the wall, but I don't understand how to stabilize. There's two buckets of stability. There's micro stability, which is basically fingertip engagement, which we don't need to go into too much. But I brought it up because the macro stability side of your handstand, which is making major weight shifts forward to back, one side of that. So if I'm in a handstand, if I'm falling back in the direction that I kicked up from, I kick up in this direction and I'm falling back in that direction. If I want to save that handstand, you can only make a macro adjustment, and macro adjustment comes from your shoulder. And I need to be able to have the range within my shoulder forward to back to keep my weight stabilized. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
So first, if I'm limited from a mobility standpoint, I'm not
no
going to be able to stabilize my handstand as much, right? It's
Yep.
reliant purely on the front of my shoulder to do all of the work. So there's a mobility component there. But if I'm falling, what do I have to do? I have to move my shoulder forward. And so moving my shoulder forward gets me into a planche type of an exercise. So are you familiar with what a planche is? A planche is a higher level gymnastics movement. There are tons of different varieties of it, but essentially holding your body out horizontally, hands on the floor.
Yep.
It's a weight distribution, balance, but also strength position.
Yeah,
so
your shoulders have to be far enough forward, right?
Exactly.
To stay balanced.
To kind of find that weight distribution. So the point here is that if you're focusing on the stability of your handstand, you should also work on simple planche exercises. There's a ton of value for the stability of your handstand to incorporate simplified planche exercises. I'm not so, worried about whether or not you're going to get a planche. I mean, that's cool if that's kind of an end goal for you. But there's tons of value for the stability side of your handstand to work on some of those progressions. So for me, if you want to work, understanding how to pull from higher level skills has a ton of value to apply it to some more of these simplified exercises. So it's just an example of how we try to pull from the gymnastics world to make it more accessible to the everyday athlete.
And how do you recommend implementing that concept into class? Like we talked before about, core work being done in finishers or at the end of class. How do you recommend incorporating that in class, and then also making sure to keep your athletes motivated to where it's like, we hear the complaint all the time that I've got athletes that have no desire to get a muscle up or ever want a handstand walk. So on those days, they don't want to show up or they don't really care. And, they just want to show up and sweat. And so how can coaches that know how valuable this is, not only for the end goal of the handstand push-up or the planche that maybe nobody's ever going to get, but just the carryover and the body awareness and all the rest of the value that comes from this, how can I implement it in class, and how can I do so in a way that is so engaging and fun that people want to keep showing up for it?
The first question is easy to answer. The second question is hard to answer. The first question is just, there are tons of simplified exercises that can be added as accessory pieces for a planche. As an example, again, I'll give you an example. We have on our YouTube channel and also in our app, tons of just planche exercises, beginner planche exercises, intermediate planche exercises, advanced planche exercises. And these are pieces that can apply to basically any shoulder work, any, bicep connection, anterior delt, any exercise that would require that type of movement pattern. You can use it as an accessory piece. So we have a planche raise, standing on your feet, dumbbells out in front, very light, straight arm work, working on the connective tissue of that elbow as well, pulling your hand out to horizontal, holding that position out in front of you, and then lowering down. That's a very simplified planche exercise that can be used as a tool if you have a handstand workout and you're saying, hey, we're going to just think a little bit about the stability of your handstand today by adding in this planche raise. It's going to allow us to understand how to think about, if we're falling that direction, how to control our stability if we're dipping our head forward. Tons of those. All right. That's just one example. When it comes to motivation, I think that's a lot harder, right? That comes to you as an owner, as a coach, to be able to say, what's the culture that we have at our gym? Our culture is one where skill progression is important. And it's not just about sweating. It's not just about being in zone 5 6 days a week. And
Right.
if that's why you're at the gym, that's great. And we hope that you can come here as often as possible. But we have a culture here where skill progression and thoughtful training is the way that we approach skill development, and the way that we approach making sure that you're learning as an athlete and becoming more capable and using your body in new ways. And so I think some of it is imperative on you as an owner, as a coach, to be able to say, that's just the way that we do things here. And then also having buy-in from members, having buy-in from a few people that are then able to act as your kind of emissaries out there. So it's not just you always being the one saying we have to spend time on our hollow position, because you need other people in your gym to say that this has been valuable for me. Look, I've been able to, I've never thought I'd be able to do a handstand, and now I'm able to walk on my hands 50 feet across the room. That's been a very cool party trick that I'd never thought I was able to do. It's because I followed Todd's progressions here and it worked. And so you need to have some people find buy-in for other people to be like, why is it working for them and not for me? And so I've found that to be helpful in situations where people say, hey, we don't want to have buy-in. And I'll just have one more little note on this, because I get the questions all the time. It's working more in groups. You have to get people in their classes to work together. And this is a tool that we use endlessly in the gymnastics world that I think is completely underutilized in the CrossFit setting when it comes to spotting. I know we didn't talk about it much today.
That's a perfect segue, because I want to.
Let's dive in. I know that we've got a
Yes.
lot of questions
Yeah.
just in general from people
So
on
how
coaching calls and things about
Sure.
about that.
Sure.
I think a lot of coaches themselves become nervous and unsure how to spot gymnastics movements in general, much less educate their clients on how to do that for other folks, right? And so it's like, how can we do that? Because to your point, the value in that is huge. And when you're doing it in the support of a group, it becomes a lot more fun. So how should we think about and go about using our member to spot each other and make that happen in class?
Well, spotting is a skill, and spotting well and confidently is something that a coach, you don't just pick up on day one. It takes a very long time to become a confident and capable spotter. And so that was one of the seminars that I taught at AffiliateCon, was just some simple starting points. I had 45 minutes. So there's only so much you can do in 45 minutes that on a topic that's fairly complex. But we tried to give some initial tools and initial starting points with regards to how to become a more capable and confident spotter. If you can do that, then you can start teaching your members how to do the same thing. It doesn't require a lot. It requires time. It requires reps. You just need to be able to understand how to position. Where do I stand when someone's about to kick up for a handstand? Where do I not stand? It's just as important to know where to stand as to where not to stand. All right. And so there are a lot of things that I see. One of the questions you had asked earlier in terms of preparation for this was some common errors that I see when people are spotting. One is having their hands occupied. When they're spotting with a tool in their hand and being like, hey,
holding
someone's
a PVC pipe, or
for the handstand,
or you're holding towards a target. If you're a spotter, you want your hands always open and available in case something should happen. Why? Because you are there to save the person in case something happens. One, you're there from a technical side. You're there to manipulate and put people into positions and help them understand the difference between what they think is happening and reality, because that is a huge distinction. Most people think they're in a particular spot, especially when they're doing a new gymnastics movement, especially a handstand, when there's such a spatial awareness component. They'll watch a video of themselves and be like, who is that person? It's definitely not me. It's you. It's just that you have never understood how to make corrections being in that new position. So the spotter's there to help say, this is where correct is. Stay in this spot, feel it, so that over time, your body just naturally takes over. But they are also there to create safety. If something should go wrong, the spotter needs to understand how to save that person and how to position themselves so that they're creating a level of safety and confidence, so that, hey, if something should go wrong, I know this person has got me. In a gymnastics gym, when I was training, I always knew the coach that I wanted to spot me on particular skills, because certain coaches are like, okay, I know if something goes wrong, this guy's got me. That coach, not so much. And so you have to train yourself as an athlete, as a coach, but then also working in groups gives other people the ability to become a tool for you. And it doesn't take much. I'm just saying it takes consistency. It takes confidence. It takes reps, just like it does learning a pull-up or learning a squat.
Is there any examples, movements, and spotting techniques that you could give us where it's like, hey, I would start here with this in the handstand. I'd start here with this in the muscle up or the pull up. Anything that we could take away from this as a
a lot of it is, I mean, I can walk through a couple of them just to give you some standing cues and things like that. A lot of it needs to be visual, so it's helpful to kind of see exactly. With a handstand kick up, easiest thing, biggest mistake I see is where people stand. So if you're a primary spotter, if you only have one spotter involved, you should always prep with the person to understand which leg they like to step out with and how they go down to the ground with their hands. It should be a stepping stone process. People shouldn't just launch themselves down to the ground. They should kind of place their hands down to the ground and then kick up with the appropriate amount of momentum to get them vertical. And that's another one of the reasons why, or get them inverted. It's one of the reasons why working with the wall can sometimes be detrimental in the long term, because you don't have to place your body. As I mentioned earlier, you can just launch yourself and you know that the wall will stop you. So when it comes to placing yourself as a spotter, you should always be on the side of the leg that's coming off the ground first, the kick leg.
Okay.
So if you're thinking about it in like a split jerk type of a setup where you have one leg that's lunging out in front, one leg that's behind, that's going to be kind of the kick leg generating the power. If you have a singular primary spotter, you're always standing on the side of the kick leg, so you're getting the leg as it comes off the ground. If you're waiting on the side of the lunge leg and that person kicks up aggressive as if they were going to a wall, you're most likely going to miss the leg. And they're going to fall on their back and they're never want to do a handstand again, or never going to want to have you as a spotter.
Right.
So,
yeah, this is great because I don't know that I've ever taken into consideration which leg is the lunge leg or the kick leg. And sometimes when I'm spotting someone to come up, it works really well. And other times it doesn't. And I can almost guarantee it just
You're
is
on the lunge leg
completely
versus-
related on the side of the body that they're on or that I'm on. Yeah.
And the other option would be somebody standing directly behind them. And I got to imagine that's where not to stand, right? Or like directly in front of somebody.
As if you're the wall.
As if you're the wall.
Yeah.
As if you're the wall, yeah.
So as a starting point, no, not ideal. Can it work? Sure, especially if the person is used to kicking up against the wall, they'll kick up into you. If they kick up super aggressive, you might get a heel in your face.
Yep.
They might kick up, especially if height is an issue, they might kick up over you and then you're catching their entire weight. So as a starting point, it's not always ideal. It can work, and you see a lot of athletes do this that are comfortable with an athlete. But I think as a starting point, standing on the side of the kick leg is the best approach.
Okay. Awesome.
I have a follow-up question about spotting and the term spotting, because I think for a lot of coaches, a lot of CrossFit coaches, we think about spotting as, like for a bench press, let's say, where I'm spotting them so that if they start to fail with their weight, I can be there to assist. Or even some of the gymnastic stuff, we're there so that if something goes wrong, then we can help assist so that they don't get in a dangerous situation. But it seems like there's also the term of spotting where we're helping manipulate them into the correct positioning so that they can feel where they're supposed to be. And so that's a little bit different than what a lot of us are used to, simply because we're taught, one of the things we teach as far as like a tactile cue is make the athlete do the work. Don't manipulate them. Don't put them into the right position. We want them to do the work to get into the correct position. So there's a little bit of like crossover there. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I would say that initially you're taking the strength out of the equation so that the person can work on positional components. Okay. And so I think a lot of times, I'll spot someone through, handstand, push up, taking the strength out of the equation, saying, I'm going to pull you through this so you can understand what the positional and the patterns feel like. And people are like, yeah, you did all of the work for me. That's why I was able to do it. That's okay. That's the point of the drill. It's not a crutch. That's a tool. Yep. And that's something we utilize in the gymnastics world endlessly, letting the coach manipulate our positions so that we can understand what our body's supposed to feel like. And then over time, we get enough reps under our belt that the spotter starts to do less and less. You're doing more and more on your own, and your body naturally takes over. So yes, it probably is a little bit different in terms of spotting a bench press where primary goal is safety. Safety is a component here, but positional and tactile cues and positioning is as important so that we can help the person understand where their body needs to be. Like I said, most of the time we have no idea where we are in relation to where we need to be with these skills. And so the coach is there, the spotter is there to help say, this is where you need to be. Feel this position, hold this position so that over time you naturally go to that spot. And so I wouldn't look at it as a detriment. It is part of the learning process.
Yeah, I love it. That's great.
I was reading one of the articles you had written for the journal, and it talked about that of like videotaping yourself, doing the movement, videotaping yourself before you watch it. Imagine yourself doing it and picture what you think you look like, and then watch the video and be like, oh yeah. Oddly enough, I don't look at all like that. And I think
the video doesn't lie.
can relate to that.
take advantage of it. When I was living at the Olympic Training Center for a long time over the years, and you have a lot of bells and whistles when you're training for Team USA. You have a lot of tools available to you. And we had in our gym, we had enormous TVs, 16 like 65-inch TVs all around the gym, each with a camera, each with a universal remote, and we would be able to watch our turns from every angle, rewind, slow-mo, pause, stop, see from every angle what was going right and going wrong. The same thing was true for us when we were learning higher level skills. We would think we were in a particular position. We would watch and be like, oh my God, I had no idea I was there. You make a change, you make a correction, and then you're able to actually feel, oh, I need to feel like this. So it doesn't change, just the skills become more complex, but having the ability to visualize versus just internally be like, I must be in the right spot, it's hugely important at every level.
Yeah, it makes me laugh too, because I know the coaches listening to this can all probably relate to giving an athlete a cue or telling an athlete something, and the athlete looks at us like we're crazy, and it's like,
Oh yeah,
I can see what you're doing, and it's like they're like, I'm doing that, and it's like, no,
Yeah.
you're not.
Clearly.
show them the camera.
Mhm.
All right, well, we've got a few questions in the chat if you want to start diving into those, Todd.
Yeah, let's do. You had the one around the pistol pulled up.
Yep.
Was that up? Oh, okay, we got that
Yeah,
now.
it's
Yep.
there. Yeah.
All right. So I love pistol squats for several reasons. One of them is the unilateral component, and I have some progressions that I use. Can you give us ideas about your approach? So single leg squats, what's your thoughts and approach to teaching those and working on that in class?
Sure. So it's funny, we work a lot with our Olympic weightlifting coaches in the Power Monkey world, the Mike Service, Chad Vaughn, Wes Kitts, Cheryl Hayworth, Vanessa McCoy. We have a pretty broad range of Olympic weightlifting coaches that are on our team, and we've had a lot of discussions about whether or not a pistol is a gymnastics movement or a weightlifting movement.
I love it.
Yeah.
What is this movement? And they refuse to accept it as a weightlifting movement.
I was just going to ask, are people trying to claim it, or are
Yeah,
people trying
No,
to push it to the other side?
They are pushing it to the other side.
No one wants to claim it.
All right.
Weightlifters have no interest in accepting a pistol as a weightlifting movement. So apparently it's a gymnastics movement. I wouldn't say that it's something that we use a lot in the gymnastics world, maybe even a little more on the women's gymnastics side,
Yeah.
because there are a lot more single leg movements that come on beam and on floor than they do on the men's side. But I would say that the progressions that are normally used within most CrossFit settings are highly beneficial. Using uprights, using assistance, using a band, using a shortened distance to be able to use targets as you go through full ranges. I think all of those things are important to kind of build some stability and some understanding of what it means to go through full ranges. But I think the CrossFit community, when it comes to pistols, has a pretty wide range of accessible tools when it comes to giving someone that might be using a pistol in a workout something that they can do and understand the movement pattern.
All right. Let's see. Yeah. Cool. What's your favorite drills, exercises for people with limited thoracic mobility, especially how it relates to getting into a strong arch position? So it's not like clearly core strength and flexibility or mobility were top of the list for you. So how can we continue to work on that?
So I think it's an important question when it comes to overhead positioning with regards to, yes, handstand work, but then also working through fuller ranges on kip mechanics, swing, gymnastic swing, kip, rings, bar, whatever it might be. And sometimes the limiting factor for people in overhead position is the T-spine. And there are some drills that we've worked with our weightlifting coaches, because I think there are a lot of exercises from, and this is one of the areas that I'm really proud of within Power Monkey, is we collaborate so closely with our other coaches to be able to say, are there some tools from the weightlifting world that are helpful to then benefit kip positioning or handstand mechanics? And we've taken a lot of the drills from overhead bar work for T-spine specific work that has benefited a lot of athletes when it comes to what they're going to be doing in their handstand and finding more range within that T-spine. So, laying down on a med ball with PVC or something weighted, trainer bar, plate overhead, where you're positioning that ball right on the point of where the most area of need is. So It's not being positioned on the lower back, it's being positioned more towards mid spine or upper back, and you're dictating where you want the pivot point to be. And then you're just allowing that weight to pull you into position and pulling back and forth to your controlling end ranges. There are tons of these exercises. I'm just kind of trying to give a specific example. What I will say on top of that, though, is a lot of times people focus on T-spine mobility when the real issue when it comes to better overhead positioning that I've noticed is more of a limitation when it comes to underarm soft tissue, especially within CrossFit settings where we have a lot of tendency to work on tons of vertical pull work. And we become very tight in our, our lats, our teres, our tricep. It becomes very difficult for us to then combat that. And so I would recommend a little bit of additional attention into exercises that tackle this mobility of that underarm soft tissue. Things like hanging, but not just hanging in over and supinated grip, working in towards under grip, supinated grip, or mixed grip at first as you start building that ability to understand how to tackle maybe one side's more tight than the other. But there are tons of ways to be tackling this. And so if it is specifically a T-spine specific exercise, there are ways to go, but don't neglect the approach when it comes to the underarm soft tissue potentially being another limitation.
I love that recommendation. Like hanging has definitely been probably the most impactful thing for shoulder, back, arm flexibility for me. And it's simple. I don't have to think about it. I don't need to set up any bands. I don't need to do any of that stuff. And the amount of impact that you can get by just trying to hang, and then the additional benefit in grip strength and everything else is extremely valuable.
That's another area we could spend a whole session on, just talking about how to hang and the benefits that come along with hanging in different grips. And so maybe podcast number 2, if you guys want to have me on again.
I'm
all things hanging.
I'm all in.
I know we talked a lot about the more of the getting inverted in the handstand and everything, but the hanging comes up so much more often just on a daily basis with our workouts for sure. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Since you've teased me with that, give me the top 3 grips. You mentioned different grips. Top 3 hanging grips. If I'm going to just try to accumulate time on a given day or throughout a given week, hanging. You mentioned overhand, underhand, mixed grip. Do you go I find more impact when I'm narrow? It's more challenging. Therefore, it feels like I'm getting more impact. What else would you recommend beyond that?
I'm not going to recommend this one, but just so that, we always try to give higher level artistic gymnastics education to people when we're teaching. So to see what it could work towards, there's a 4th grip hanging in the gymnastics world, depending on who you're talking to. In the United States, in the US, English speaking countries, it's called an L grip, a dorsal grip, or an eagle grip, which is a severely internally rotated grip this.
Yeah.
So we hang in that grip as well. So it's not something I recommend people doing right away, but just to understand that gymnasts swing around the bar, we release, we catch in that grip as well.
I'm sure I've seen videos on CrossFit of you holding and manipulating yourself, right? Going from that position back and forth and having the ability. Most of us, when we hang with one arm, our body just naturally twists into it, right? And we don't have the control. And so to develop the stability and control there, correct?
Yeah, and that's so important, where you're manipulating the apparatus and the apparatus is not manipulating you. And so it comes starting from grip strength, of just starting with PVCs and rotations and understanding how to hold on properly. Where does the bar sit in our hand? What is our thumb doing? Where are we looking? The conversation here could go on for hours too, talking about the difference between an active shoulder where you're getting your lat engaged versus what do you call this position here?
You could say shoulder. Inactive. So I would just a passive hang.
Passive hang or dead hang.
Dead hang.
I don't want those to be the thought there, because they have such a negative thought process to them. Passive, you're not in control. Dead hang, obviously not a great thought process. It's an open shoulder hang. And as we get into dynamic action, you watch any gymnast who comes through the bottom of a swing, whether that's, doing a full rotation around the bar, which is the highest level version of a swing. We call that a giant swing, or just a smaller swing through the bottom to do something like a kip or a bar muscle up. We never have any angles at the bottom. Angles lead to slack, and slack leads to tugging on those joints. That's unnecessary. So when you're only ever teaching someone to hang in an active shoulder, which does have a ton of value, you're creating an angle at your shoulder.
Yeah.
And I don't care how strong you are. I don't care if it's the strongest person in the world. Gravity is stronger than you, which means that over time, as you fatigue, this angle will get pulled to the bottom, and you will create that tugging on the joints that we try to avoid. So whether it's an angle at the shoulder, at the elbow, or at the wrist, all of those angles will get pulled to a straight line position over time. So we try to teach people is that hanging in an active shoulder is important, absolutely, but we also need to be comfortable and get the shoulder girdle and all of the shoulder muscles
strong enough,
entirely surrounding that shoulder joint strong enough to be able to hang with an open shoulder so that you can apply it to a kip swing appropriately. And so we didn't go into this very much today when it comes to phase 3, dynamic action, and some of the pieces that go into it. But there's a lot of importance that needs to be played in terms of building range of motion around your hang, not just hanging an active shoulder, but actually hanging in an open shoulder as well.
That's so great. So definitely value there. Say what you said one more time. An angle creates slack.
Angle creates slack, and slack leads to tugging on the joints, right? So you hit the bottom of any swing and you have an angle at your elbow, shoulder, wrist. That's when you get unnecessary stress being put onto those joints. And so we always want to be creating tension. Tension is the opposition of slack. How do we create tension when we're coming through the swing? Curved shapes and straight lines, no angles. And so we're always trying to find positions that allow us to come through the bottom, that allow for either a curved shape, which creates essentially like a slingshot action, that arch or that hollow, boom, that we allow it to release as we go through a swing, or a straight line, which is kind of the midpoint of any of those swings. So again, angles are the enemy, curved shapes and straight lines are our friend when we're doing anything swinging.
Oh, I love it.
So I was teaching at level 1 this last weekend, and we were doing the ring muscle up breakout where we're going over the progression. We had a guy that was pretty big and strong, and he was doing his just ring support. And like a lot of people do, his elbows were going out, his thumbs were facing in, and he had a big break at his elbow, right? So I challenged him to turn his palms out, to try to get externally rotated and try to lock that elbow out. And the way I described it to him is like in gymnastics, you want to essentially, in certain movements, eliminate joints. Would that be a correct term? It kind of sounds like it's in line with this, where you want to get rid of angles. Like if I'm at the top of the rings in a support, the only thing that I want moving if I'm going to do something is my shoulder, not my elbow. So I need to straighten that and eliminate essentially that joint for that specific movement. Is that the right thought process and concept?
Yeah. 2 points I want to make there. One is, I would say kind of the easiest way to think about it is like stacked joints, right? Stacked joints, resting on your skeletal structure as much as possible, as opposed to having to use the musculature in certain positions. In the same way that if you're overhead, you're not going to be bending the elbow with max weight over the bar. Stacked joint, resting on skeletal structure is optimal. When it comes to a support position, one of the biggest mistakes that I see athletes do is that they jump to the rings way too early. If you have a strong athlete that is struggling in support and they're internally rotating, they're resting the straps up against their forearms, they're bending the elbows, the missed component is working on static apparatus first. And if you go back and you look at CrossFit Santa Cruz back in the day in Glassman's gym, he had a set of parallel bars in there. He had a pommel horse in there. Parallel bars is one of our events. And you might not have a set of parallel bars in your gym, but everybody either has, Matador dip bars, or you have a set of boxes. That is your opportunity to work on some positional components around support before you jump onto the rings. This is almost universal. So I have people test this out to show them, hey, this is in most courses. Let's go to boxes. Let's work on understanding where the elbows need to be placed, where the shoulder needs to be placed before you expect to do these things on something dynamic like the rings. So I would highly recommend people working on the support positions on something static first before they expect it to magically happen on something dynamic like rings.
Yeah.
Static before dynamic.
Static before dynamic, with static apparatus as well before static movement. You know what I mean? Not just static movement, static apparatus as well.
Final thing here I want to get to is any drills recommended for hypermobile shoulders. You made mention of trying to get strong. Hanging is going to make you strong in that what we termed passive hangs, which we're going to call open shoulders from now on. I will never say passive again. Anything
Excellent.
specific for somebody that's hypermobile?
Yeah, my wife is a circus performer, and she's very hypermobile and does contortion-y type stuff, and so it's an area that we spend some time on. She works a lot on building the ability to control her end ranges, and I think this is sometimes a little bit lost when it comes to mobility being such a consideration. More mobility is better. More mobility is better for most people, yes, but for people who are hypermobile, controlling your end ranges is just as important as going to those end ranges, right? Not just going to the end ranges passively because you can, but being able to work your way in and out of them appropriately. So for someone that is hypermobile in their shoulders, the goal is to be able to find exercises, and we have a ton of these within our training protocols in our app and everything, but spending time in phase 2, holding positions, controlling and working slowly and tempo through some of these more simplified positions so you can actually control them as opposed to just going them passively. So it's just spending time in phase 2 quite a bit so you can control the ranges.
Awesome, man. I feel like we could keep going for another hour here, but I don't want to take all your time. This has been awesome. We definitely need to get you back on. I'll do an hour on hanging. I will definitely take you up on that offer. I think that sounds awesome to me. Where can people find you? I know Kristin's going to drop some links in the chat here, but
sure.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the time today, guys. I love this is my passion in life is to get more people to work on gymnastics, especially people that didn't grow up with it. So my Instagram is @DaveDurante, @PowerMonkeyFitness, @PowerMonkeyCamp. You can go to PowerMonkeyFitness.com or PowerMonkeyCamp.com as well if you want more information about what we do. Most people probably know us for our camp. It's a full week-long adult fitness camp out in the woods of Tennessee that we host 2 times a year in Crossville, Tennessee. We have a 150-acre campus, 50,000 square foot of gym space. We normally bring out about 30 to 40 experts in a variety of different areas. And so if you want to come and hang out with us for an entire week, our next one is going to be April 26th to May 2nd. And then we have a long weekend version in the fall, September 24th to 27th. It's awesome. We're in our 13th year. We're doing our 25th camp. So we've been doing it for a while now. So come and hang out with us on Tennessee.
I've talked to many people who've gone. I've heard nothing but amazing things about it. So that sounds super fun.
I got to get you guys out there too. You'd love it.
Yeah, I think
sure.
April, I think if I put it on my calendar now, I think I can probably make it happen. So
we got Jess on our bucket list. Make it happen, Jess.
It's worth it.
This has been amazing. Thank you so much for giving us your time. This has been so much fun. We'll definitely have to have you back on.
Absolutely.
Really
Thank you both.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for checking out this episode of the Best Hour of Their Day podcast. Now, if you're a coach who wants to coach more effectively, impact your members, and advance your career, then the Knowledge Pro is the next step. Inside, you'll get hundreds of coaching videos, weekly calls with level 4 coaches, and direct feedback on your coaching. From homework reviews to full class breakdowns, we do it all. This is the best way to grow as a coach and take your skills to the next level. Now you can join the Knowledge Pro at besthouroftheirday.com/the-knowledge. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. Now keep coaching, keep improving, and we'll see you next time.